In a peaceful suburban neighborhood, one homeowner's disregard for a black man's property turned into a shocking series of events that no one saw coming. For months, she parked her car in his driveway, ignoring his polite requests to stop. But when karma caught up with her, it changed everything. This is a story of injustice, resilience, and how a simple act of disrespect led to a shocking twist. Jamal had always prided himself on being a peaceful and respectful neighbor. He cherished the quiet suburban neighborhood where everyone looked out for one another. But his sense of peace was disturbed when Karen, a longtime resident a few houses down, began parking her car in his driveway. At first, Jamal didn't mind too much. He thought it was just an isolated incident. Perhaps she had made a mistake, he reasoned. But when it became a regular occurrence, his patience began to wear thin. Every time he came home, Karen's car was there, blocking his driveway and preventing him from parking his own vehicle. Being a courteous and understanding man, Jamal decided to approach Karen with a calm and polite request. He knocked on her door, explained that her car was blocking his driveway, and kindly asked her to stop parking there. Karen, with a half-hearted apology, promised it wouldn't happen again. However, the very next day, her car was back in the same spot. It was as though she hadn't heard a word Jamal said. Jamal tried again, leaving polite notes on her windshield, asking her to respect his property. But his efforts seemed to have no effect. It wasn't just the inconvenience of not being able to park that frustrated him, it was the blatant disregard for his boundaries. His repeated attempts to resolve the issue peacefully were met with indifference, and it became clear that Karen wasn't going to change her behavior. Jamal's patience was tested, and he began to wonder how much longer he could tolerate her. Constant disrespect. Little did he know, the situation was about to escalate far beyond what he ever imagined. As the weeks passed, Karen's disregard for Jamal's requests only grew more evident. Jamal, frustrated but determined to remain calm, had reached the point where he could no longer ignore the situation. Karen continued to park in his driveway, not once acknowledging his polite warnings. It felt as though she was deliberately testing his patience, and the more he let it slide, the bolder she became. Every time Jamal returned home from work, he was met with the same sight, Karen's car blocking his driveway, making it impossible for him to park. This time, Jamal decided to take a different approach. He called the local towing company, inquiring about the procedure for towing a car that was unlawfully parked on private property. The operator was clear. If a car was blocking a driveway, Jamal had every right to have it towed. For a moment, Jamal hesitated. He didn't want to escalate things further, but the frustration of having his requests ignored weighed heavily on him. One evening, after returning from a long day at work, Jamal found Karen's car once again parked in his driveway. He stood there for a moment, feeling the weight of the situation. He had been patient, tried to reason with her, and left countless notes, but nothing had changed. It was time to take action. With a sense of finality, Jamal called the towing company. He knew this was the only way to put an end to the escalating disrespect. The moment he hung up the phone, he felt a strange sense of relief. Little did Karen know, her defiance was about to cost her in a way she never expected. The morning after Jamal made the call to the towing company, Karen was blissfully unaware of the storm that was about to hit her. As usual, she prepared to leave for her errands, but when she walked out of her house, she stopped dead in her tracks. Her car, which had been parked in Jamal's driveway just the night before, was nowhere to be seen. Panic set in as she looked around, confused. She rushed to the spot where her car had been, only to find an empty space. It took a moment for the reality to hit her. Jamal had followed through with his threat and had her car towed. Karen stormed over to Jamal's house, her anger evident in every step. She rang the doorbell, and when Jamal answered, she immediately started yelling. "What did you do to my car?" she demanded. "You had no right to have it towed. How dare you?" Jamal, calm and collected, stood his ground. "I asked you multiple times to stop parking in my driveway, Karen," he said, his voice steady. "You ignored my requests, and I had no choice but to take action. You can pick it up at the towing company." Karen's face flushed with rage as she tried to argue, but there was no use. Jamal had already made his decision, and she couldn't reverse it. As she walked away, her anger simmering, she knew one thing for sure. This wasn't over. She'd have to pay hefty fees to get her car back, and Jamal had made it clear that he wasn't going to back down. The consequences of her careless actions were finally catching up to her. Karen's anger only grew as the days went by. After retrieving her car from the towing company, she had to pay a substantial fine, far more than she expected. The towing fees, combined with the storage charges, added up to a hefty sum, and her frustration boiled over. When she returned home, she was seething with indignation, but as she parked her car, reality began to set in. This wasn't just about the car or the money. It was about her actions and how they had led to her downfall. Karen had ignored Jamal's polite requests, thinking she could get away with it. But now, the consequences were undeniable. The neighborhood, once quiet and indifferent, had started to take notice. Jamal's calm and firm approach had sparked conversations among the other residents. Many had witnessed the ongoing issue and had been silently waiting for someone to stand up to Karen's inconsiderate behavior. Now that Jamal had taken action, they all rallied behind him. Neighbors who had once avoided confrontation began to speak out, voicing their support for Jamal and their disappointment in Karen. Karen, once respected in the community, now felt isolated. Her behavior had alienated her from those around her. The once friendly neighbors now gave her cold stares, and the gossip about her continued to spread. Jamal's actions, though simple, had brought a sense of justice to the neighborhood, and it was clear that Karen had overstepped her bounds. As she sat in her car that evening, reflecting on the events, Karen realized that her sense of entitlement had cost her more than just money. It had cost her the respect of her community. The fallout from her actions was far more severe than she had anticipated. Chapter 5. The Final Lesson. The days that followed were quiet for Jamal, as the storm of tension that had built up in the neighborhood slowly began to subside. Karen, on the other hand, found herself facing the consequences of her actions, and the weight of it all began to sink in. She no longer had the same sense of superiority she once carried. The community, which had once turned a blind eye to her behavior, now saw her for what she had truly been: disrespectful and dismissive of others. No one wanted to associate with her anymore, and her reputation in the neighborhood had been tarnished beyond repair. Jamal, however, had no regrets. He had done what he felt was right, and while he didn't seek confrontation, he also wasn't afraid to stand up for himself when needed. His decision to have Karen's car towed had not only protected his property, but it had also sent a message to the entire neighborhood that disrespectful behavior would not be tolerated. Jamal continued to live his life peacefully, knowing that he had taken a stand for what was right without letting anger or bitterness control him. Karen, now isolated and reflecting on the series of events, couldn't help but realize how wrong she had been. Her inability to respect Jamal's requests had cost her much more than just a few dollars. It had cost her dignity and her place in the community. In the end, the lesson was clear. Entitlement and disregard for others' boundaries would only lead to regret. Jamal had been patient and polite, and it was his calm, steady response that ultimately taught Karen the most valuable lesson of all. She would never make the same mistake again, and she knew that karma had a way of balancing the scales when least expected. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the like button and share your thoughts in the comments below. Share this video with your friends and family to spread the word. For more incredible stories, make sure to subscribe to Struggle Stories and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Your support means the world to us. Keep watching, Keep sharing.